They brushed off my birthday like always, then threw my sister a lavish party the same week. So I walked away for good, and their reaction was beyond crazy. I'm 28 years old, and I finally reached my breaking point with my family. What happened last month has completely shattered any hope I had left for a normal relationship with them. I need to get this off my chest because honestly, I'm still processing how insane their reaction was to me simply standing up for myself. Let me give you some background first. I'm the middle child of 3 daughters. My older sister, Madison, is 31, and my younger sister, Chloe, is 25. Growing up, I always felt like the forgotten one. Madison was the overachiever who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Straight A's, star athlete, full scholarship to Northwestern. Chloe was the baby who got away with everything and was spoiled rotten because she was the surprise blessing my parents had when they thought they were done having kids. And then there was me, Juliet. Average grades, no standout talents, just trying to get by and not rock the boat. My parents, Linda and Robert, always seemed to view me as the easy one who didn't need much attention because I was so independent and low maintenance. What they didn't realize was that I was at low maintenance by choice. I just learned early on that asking for things led to disappointment. Every birthday growing up was a stark reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. Madison's birthdays were events. We're talking themed parties with dozens of friends, elaborate decorations, expensive gifts, and my mom would spend weeks planning every detail. Chloe's birthdays were equally extravagant, if not more so. Princess parties, pony rides, bouncy houses, whatever her heart desired. My birthdays, a store-bought cake, dinner at whatever restaurant I picked, usually something casual because I felt guilty asking for anything expensive, and a few practical gifts. No parties, no friends invited, just the 5 of us around the dining room table with my parents checking their phones half the time. I told myself it didn't matter. I convinced myself I preferred intimate celebrations anyway, but deep down it hurt every single time, especially when they'd spend more on Madison's birthday decorations alone than they did on my entire celebration. This pattern continued well into adulthood. Even after I moved out, got my own apartment, and started working as a marketing coordinator at a nonprofit, nothing changed. Madison's 30th birthday last year was a weekend getaway to Napa Valley that my parents organized and paid for entirely. Chloe's 24th was a surprise party at an upscale restaurant with 40 guests. My 27th birthday, a text asking if I wanted to meet for lunch sometime that week. I've tried talking to my parents about this over the years, but they always had excuses. Madison has been so stressed with her law practice, or Chloe is going through a rough patch and needs extra support. When I pointed out the disparity in how our birthdays were treated, my mom would get defensive and say I was being dramatic and that they loved all of us equally, just differently. But this year was different. This year, I decided I was going to advocate for myself. My 28th birthday was coming up on October 15th, and I was determined to finally have the celebration I'd always wanted. I started planning early, dropping hints to my family about how excited I was for my birthday this year, and how I hoped we could do something really special. 3 weeks before my birthday, I sat my parents down and told them how important this birthday was to me. I explained that I'd been feeling overlooked for years, and that I really wanted them to put some effort into making this one memorable. I wasn't asking for anything crazy. Maybe a nice dinner somewhere upscale, invite my aunts and uncles, get a custom cake, put up some decorations, basic party stuff that they'd done countless times for my sisters. My dad nodded along and said they'd absolutely make it special. My mom hugged me and apologized for not realizing how I've been feeling. For the first time in years, I felt heard and valued by my parents. I was genuinely excited and started telling my friends how my family was finally going to throw me a real birthday party. As October 15th approached, I kept asking about the plans. My mom would say they were working on it and to leave it to them. I figured they wanted it to be a surprise, so I backed off and tried to be patient. I even bought a new dress for whatever they had planned. October 15th came and went with nothing. No party, no special dinner, no decorations, just another casual family dinner at a chain restaurant where the server sang happy birthday and brought out a slice of cheesecake with a candle in it. I sat there trying not to cry, while my dad took exactly 2 photos with his phone, and my mom spent most of the dinner talking about her book club. Madison wasn't even there because she had work obligations, and Chloe showed up 20 minutes late because she got distracted shopping. The whole thing lasted an hour and a half, and I drove home feeling more invisible than ever. I was hurt, but I tried to rationalize it. Maybe they were planning a belated celebration. Maybe something had come up that week that derailed their plans. I decided to give them the benefit of the doubt and waited to see if they'd mention rescheduling. Then October 20th happened. I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw a story from my cousin Tyler. It was a video of an absolutely gorgeous party setup, twinkling lights, elaborate floral arrangements, a dessert table that looked like it belonged in a magazine, and a banner that read, "Happy 25th birthday, Chloe," in elegant gold lettering. I clicked through the rest of his stories and felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. There was Chloe in a beautiful dress, surrounded by at least 50 people, all celebrating her 25th birthday in my parents' backyard, a backyard that had been transformed into something out of a fairy tale. I immediately called my mom, my hands shaking with anger and hurt. "Juliet, honey, what's up?" She answered casually. "What's up? What's up?" I could barely keep my voice steady. "You threw Chloe a massive birthday party, 5 days after completely ignoring mine." There was a pause. "Oh, sweetie, this is different. Chloe's been really down lately because of her breakup with Jake, and we thought she needed something to cheer her up. Plus, her birthday isn't until next month, but she's going to be traveling then for work, so we moved it up. So you moved her birthday party to 5 days after mine, after I specifically told you how important this birthday was to me. Juliet, you're being dramatic again. This isn't about you." Dramatic again? After 28 years of being overlooked, dismissed, and treated like an afterthought, I was being dramatic for having feelings about it. "You know what, Mom? You're right. This isn't about me. It's never been about me, and I'm finally okay with that." I hung up and sat in my apartment, staring at more Instagram posts from the party. There were professional photos, a live acoustic guitarist, catered food from an expensive restaurant, and a custom 3-tier cake. Everything I had asked for and more was given to Chloe without her even requesting it. That's when I made my decision. I was done. I didn't make a big announcement or send a dramatic text. I simply stopped reaching out. I stopped calling, stopped texting, stopped showing up to family dinners. I removed myself from the family group chat and unfollowed all of them on social media. I figured if they wanted a relationship with me, they'd notice my absence and reach out. For 2 weeks, nothing. Complete silence from all of them. It actually validated everything I'd been feeling. I really was that forgettable to them. But then my phone started ringing. It started with Madison. "Juliet, Mom is freaking out that you've gone no contact. What's your problem?" When I explained what happened, she scoffed. "You're seriously cutting off the family because of a birthday party. That's incredibly immature." Then came who had the audacity to say, "I didn't even ask for that party. You're punishing me for something I didn't do." But the real insanity started when my parents realized I was serious about staying away. My mom showed up at my apartment unannounced on a Tuesday evening, crying hysterically in my hallway. "Juliet, you're tearing this family apart. Your father hasn't slept in days because he's so worried about you. How can you be so selfish?" Selfish? I was selfish for removing myself from a dynamic that was harmful to me. When I calmly explained my position and asked her to leave, she started screaming that I was throwing away my family over nothing and that I was acting like a spoiled brat. My neighbor actually came out to check if everything was okay. My dad tried a different approach. He started sending me long emails about how disappointed he was in me for abandoning my family and how I was setting a terrible example for my younger sister. He accused me of being jealous and vindictive and said I was proving that I was the problem by running away instead of working things out. The emails got increasingly manipulative. He brought up every family vacation I'd been on, every time they'd supported me, every dollar they'd spent on my education, as if I owed them a relationship because of their basic parental obligations. Then Madison jumped in with her own brand of emotional manipulation. She called me crying, saying that Mom had been so distraught she'd been eating anxiety medication like candy and that Dad had been drinking more than usual. According to Madison, it was all my fault for being stubborn and unreasonable. "You're being incredibly selfish," she sobbed into the phone. "Family is supposed to forgive each other. You're choosing your pride over your family." But here's where it got really crazy. When none of their guilt trips worked, they decided to recruit reinforcements. Suddenly, I was getting calls and texts from aunts, uncles, grandparents, and family friends, all telling me what a terrible daughter I was being and how heartbroken my parents were. My Aunt Carol, who I barely spoke to, left me a voicemail saying I was breaking my mother's heart and that I needed to get over myself and apologize. My grandmother, who's 82 years old, called to tell me I was shaming the family and that she didn't raise me to be so cold and unforgiving. The most ridiculous one was my mom's friend from work, who I'd met maybe 3 times, messaging me on Facebook to tell me that my parents were saints and that I was ungrateful for everything they'd done for me. They had turned me into the villain in their narrative. I wasn't a daughter who had been consistently overlooked and finally stood up for herself. I was a selfish, cruel person who was tearing apart a loving family for no reason. But the absolute peak of their insanity came 3 weeks after I'd gone no contact. I came home from work to find my entire family sitting in my apartment building's lobby. My parents, both sisters, and my mom's brother, Uncle Pete, who lived 3 hours away, and had apparently driven down for this intervention. They had somehow convinced my building manager to let them wait inside, claiming it was a family emergency. When I saw them, I immediately turned around to leave, but my dad called out, "Juliet, we're not leaving until you talk to us." I was trapped. My neighbors were staring, and I didn't want to cause a scene, so I reluctantly agreed to go upstairs and talk. The moment we got into my apartment, they ambushed me. My mom immediately started crying again, talking about how I was destroying the family and how she hadn't slept in weeks because she was so worried about me. My dad launched into a lecture about responsibility and commitment and how family doesn't just give up on each other. Madison kept interrupting to tell me I was being ridiculous and childish, while Chloe sat there looking confused and hurt, asking why I hated her so much. But Uncle Pete, who barely knew me, was the worst. He started yelling about how I was disrespecting my elders and how kids today don't know how good they have it. He actually pointed his finger in my face and told me I was a disappointment to the family. For an hour, they took turns berating me, guilt-tripping me, and demanding that I apologize and come back to family dinners. Not once did anyone acknowledge why I had distanced myself in the first place. Not once did anyone validate my feelings or admit that maybe they had treated me unfairly. Finally, I'd had enough. "Get out," I said quietly. "Juliet, we're trying to help you." My mom started. "Get out," I shouted. "All of you, get out of my apartment right now." The room went silent. I think they were shocked that I had finally raised my voice. "You want to know what's childish?" I continued, my voice shaking with anger. "What's childish is 28 years of treating one child differently and then gaslighting her when she calls you out on it. What's childish is mobilizing the entire extended family to harass someone instead of just reflecting on your own behavior." I looked directly at my parents. "You had the chance to show me I mattered to you. I literally begged you to make my birthday special, and you couldn't be bothered. But 5 days later, you threw Chloe the party of her dreams without her even asking for it." My mom opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to keep begging for crumbs of attention from people who clearly don't value me. I'm not going to keep pretending that being treated like an afterthought is normal or acceptable." I walked to my front door and opened it. "Leave now and don't come back unless you're ready to acknowledge what you've done and genuinely apologize." One by one, they filed out. My mom crying, my dad shaking his head in disgust, and Uncle Pete muttering about ungrateful kids. Madison was the last to leave. She stopped in my doorway and said, "You know, Juliet, sometimes I don't even recognize you anymore. This isn't who you used to be." "You're right," I replied. "I used to be someone who accepted being treated poorly because I was afraid of losing my family. Now I'm someone who knows I deserve better." After they left, I sat on my couch and cried for 2 hours. Not because I missed them, but because I was mourning the family I'd always wanted but never had. That was 6 weeks ago, and things have only gotten more insane. They've now started what I can only describe as a full-scale campaign to force me back into the family. They've contacted my employer, claiming they're worried about my mental health and asking if I've been acting strangely at work. They've reached out to my friends, telling them I've had a breakdown and asking them to convince me to reconnect with my family. My mom has sent me over 50 emails, ranging from tearful apologies that blame me for misunderstanding their actions to angry rants about how I'm tearing the family apart. My dad has started showing up at my apartment building at random times, leaving gifts and notes outside my door. Chloe has been the worst, though. She's created fake social media accounts to message me, claiming she just wants to understand why I hate her so much. When I blocked those, she started having her friends message me instead. Madison hired a lawyer to send me a cease and desist letter claiming I was harassing the family by not responding to their attempts at contact. Yes, you read that right. They sent me a legal document demanding that I stop ignoring them. The latest escalation came last week when they all showed up at my workplace during my lunch break. My mom marched into the reception area and started crying loudly about how her daughter was having a mental breakdown and refusing to speak to her family. My dad demanded to speak to my supervisor about his concerns for my well-being. My boss, thankfully, is amazing and basically told them they needed to leave or she'd call security. But the whole thing was mortifying, and I ended up having to explain the situation to HR to make sure they understood that I wasn't actually having a mental health crisis. The irony is that their behavior is proving exactly why I needed to distance myself from them in the first place. Instead of reflecting on their actions and trying to make amends, they've doubled down on emotional manipulation, harassment, and public humiliation. They keep saying, "I'm tearing the family apart." But what family? A family where one member is consistently treated as less important than the others. A family where expressing hurt feelings makes you dramatic and selfish. A family that mobilizes against you the moment you stop accepting poor treatment. I've started seeing a therapist to help me process everything, and she's helped me understand that what my family is doing isn't normal or healthy. The level of harassment and manipulation I've experienced since going no contact is actually confirmation that I made the right choice. She's also helped me see that I'm not responsible for managing their emotions or fixing their feelings about my absence. If they're truly devastated by losing me, they have a very simple solution. Acknowledge what they did wrong and genuinely apologize. But they'd rather spend their energy trying to force me back into a harmful dynamic than actually address the problem. I've changed my phone number, increased security at my apartment building, and warned my employer about their behavior. I've also started documenting everything they do in case I need to pursue legal action for harassment. Some days are harder than others. I do miss the idea of having a close family, but I don't miss the reality of how they actually treated me. I've been able to build stronger friendships and focus on my career in ways I never could when I was constantly dealing with family drama. My friends have been incredible through all of this. They validated my decision and helped me see how abnormal my family's behavior really is. Several of them have said they always wondered why I seem so anxious around my family, and now they understand. The breaking point for me came about 2 weeks after the workplace incident. I was finally starting to feel like maybe they were backing off when I got a call from my landlord, Mrs. Peterson. She's this sweet elderly woman who has always been kind to me, and she sounded genuinely concerned. "Juliet, honey, your mother called me this morning," she said hesitantly. "She's very worried about you and asked if I could do a wellness check. She said you might be having some kind of mental health crisis and that you haven't been taking care of yourself properly." My blood ran cold. They were now involving my landlord in their manipulation campaign. "Mrs. Peterson, I'm perfectly fine," I assured her. "My family and I are having a disagreement, and they're trying to pressure me into reconciling by making it seem like I'm unstable. I promise you I'm mentally and physically healthy." There was a pause. "Well, you certainly sound fine to me, dear, but your mother was very insistent. She asked if she could have a spare key to check on you." The audacity was breathtaking. They wanted my landlord to give them access to my apartment. "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "Mrs. Peterson, I need you to know that I do not want my family to have any access to my apartment or information about me. If they contact you again, please don't engage with them." She agreed, but I could tell the whole situation made her uncomfortable. I felt terrible that they had dragged this innocent woman into their drama. That same week, I discovered they had escalated to an even more disturbing level. My best friend Jessica called me, sounding confused and a little freaked out. "Juliet, I just had the weirdest conversation with someone claiming to be your sister," she said. "She found me on LinkedIn and sent me this long message about how you've cut off your entire family and they're worried you're having a breakdown. She asked if I'd noticed any changes in your behavior and if I could convince you to call your mom." Madison had tracked down my friends and was essentially conducting investigations into my mental state and daily life. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "I told her, you seemed happier and more relaxed than I'd seen you in years, and that maybe there was a reason you needed space from them," Jessica replied. "But Juliet, this is really weird behavior. Normal families don't hire detective services on their own children." She was right, but it got worse. Over the next few days, I discovered that Madison had contacted not just Jessica, but practically everyone I knew. My college roommate Emma got a Facebook message. My coworker David got a LinkedIn message. Even my yoga instructor, who I'd only mentioned by name in passing during family dinners years ago, got contacted. The messages all followed the same pattern, expressing concern about my mental health, claiming I'd suddenly cut off my loving family for no reason, and asking people to report back on my behavior and convince me to reconcile. It was a coordinated campaign to isolate me and make me look unstable. The most insidious part was how they framed it as concern rather than harassment. To someone who didn't know the full story, it might actually look like they were worried family members trying to help a troubled relative. But my friends saw right through it. Emma called me laughing, saying Madison's message was so over-the-top dramatic that it read like a soap opera script. David was actually angry on my behalf, calling their behavior manipulative and creepy. The validation from my friends meant everything to me, but I was also deeply embarrassed that my family drama was now affecting people who had nothing to do with it. Then came what I now refer to as the Christmas campaign. Even though it was only November, my mom started her holiday guilt offensive early. I began receiving daily emails with subject lines like "Your empty chair at Christmas" and "How can we celebrate without you?" The emails were masterpieces of emotional manipulation. She wrote about how she'd already bought my Christmas presents and how heartbroken she was that I wouldn't be there to open them. She described in detail how she'd been crying while decorating the house because every ornament reminded her of me. She even sent me a photo of the Christmas stockings she'd hung for me. Anyway, just in case you come to your senses, my dad joined in with his own version, sending me articles about the importance of family during the holidays and statistics about how family arrangement affects mental health. He'd forward me these pieces with comments like, "This made me think of you and how much you're hurting yourself by staying away." Chloe's approach was different, but equally manipulative. She started posting Instagram stories that were clearly designed to make me feel guilty. Photos of her looking sad with captions like "missing someone who used to be my best friend" and "wish I understood what I did wrong." She'd post throwback photos of us as kids with captions like "simpler times when my sister still loved me." The worst part was that she was getting a lot of sympathy from mutual friends who didn't know the full story. People were commenting things like, "I'm sorry you're going through this and she'll come around eventually." It was like she was crowdsourcing validation for their narrative, that I was the unreasonable one. Madison took a more aggressive approach, sending me legal documents about family estrangement and its psychological effects on both parties. She'd include cover letters explaining that she was concerned about the legal and psychological ramifications of my decision, and strongly advising me to seek family therapy with all of them. When none of this worked, they tried recruiting my extended family more systematically. I started getting calls from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, all pairing the same talking points about forgiveness and family loyalty. My cousin Rachel, who I'd barely interacted with since childhood, called me sobbing about how my absence was destroying family unity and how I was being selfish and vindictive. She told me that my aunt was having panic attacks because she was so worried about me and that my grandmother had been praying for me every night. My uncle Mike, who lived across the country and had never shown any interest in my life before, sent me a handwritten letter about how family is the most important thing and how I was throwing away something precious over a misunderstanding. Even cousins I'd never met personally were messaging me on social media, telling me that they'd heard about the family crisis and encouraging me to be the bigger person and reconcile. The coordinated nature of it was obvious and honestly kind of impressive in its scope. They had mobilized what felt like every single person who shared even a drop of DNA with me. But perhaps the most manipulative thing they did was involve my grandmother directly, in a way that felt particularly cruel. My 82-year-old grandmother, who I genuinely loved and who had always been kind to me, called me one evening crying hysterically. Through her tears, she told me that my mom had told her I'd said I never wanted to see any of them again and that I hated the whole family. I had never said anything remotely like that. I'd simply stopped engaging with them after repeated attempts to manipulate me. "Juliet, sweetheart," my grandmother sobbed, "I don't understand what we did to make you hate us so much. Your mother is so heartbroken, and I'm scared I'm going to die without seeing you again." The conversation broke my heart because I could tell my grandmother genuinely believed what she'd been told. My parents had painted me as this cruel person who had rejected her entire family out of spite rather than someone who had removed herself from a harmful dynamic. I gently explained to my grandmother that I didn't hate anyone, that I'd simply needed space because of how I'd been treated, and that my parents were misrepresenting both my words and my actions. She listened quietly and then said something that surprised me. "You know, Juliet, your mother has always been dramatic. Even as a little girl, she'd exaggerate things when she didn't get her way." After that conversation, I realized that some of my extended family might be more receptive to hearing my side of the story than I'd thought. So I decided to write a letter explaining my perspective to the relatives who had contacted me. I kept it factual and calm, explaining the pattern of differential treatment I'd experienced, the specific incident with the birthday parties, and my attempts to address the issue before going no contact. I emphasized that this wasn't about hatred or revenge, but about protecting my mental health and self-respect. The responses I got were eye-opening. Several relatives apologized for jumping to conclusions and said they had no idea there was more to the story. My cousin Tyler, who had originally posted the Instagram stories about Chloe's party, actually called me to apologize and said he'd noticed the pattern of favoritism growing up, but hadn't realized how bad it was. My Aunt Carol, who had initially left me angry voicemails, sent me a long email admitting that she'd seen similar behavior from my parents over the years, but had assumed it wasn't her place to say anything. She said she was sorry for not recognizing what I was going through. Even Uncle Pete, who had been so aggressive during the apartment ambush, reached out to apologize after talking to his wife, who had apparently pointed out that his own behavior had been inappropriate regardless of the family situation. This shift in some of my extended family's understanding seemed to panic my parents and sisters. Suddenly, they were losing control of the narrative they'd worked so hard to establish. That's when they made their most desperate and frankly unhinged move yet. I came home from work one day to find a moving truck parked outside my apartment building. Confused, I went upstairs to find my mom directing two movers who were carrying boxes into the apartment next to mine. She saw me and burst into tears. "Juliet, oh honey, I've been so worried about you. What are you doing here?" I asked, though I was afraid I already knew the answer. "I rented the apartment next door so I can be close to you and make sure you're okay," she said, as if this was a completely normal and reasonable thing to do. "The lease is for 6 months, so we'll have plenty of time to work things out." I stood there in shock as she continued explaining her plan. She was going to live next door to me, cook meals for me, and help me through whatever I was going through. She'd already talked to Mrs. Peterson about it, claiming it was a therapeutic intervention recommended by a family counselor. "Mom, you cannot move in next door to me," I said, trying to keep my voice calm despite the fact that I was internally screaming. "Sweetie, I'm just trying to take care of you. I know you're hurting and confused, and I want to be here for you." The manipulation was so transparent it was almost insulting. This wasn't about taking care of me. This was about maintaining surveillance and control. I immediately called Mrs. Peterson, who apologetically explained that my mother had signed a legitimate lease and there wasn't anything she could do to break it without cause. However, she did agree to install better locks on my door and promised to let me know if my mother tried to access any building services or information about me. Living next door to my mother turned out to be every bit as awful as you'd expect. She would knock on my door multiple times a day, leaving food and gifts outside when I didn't answer. She'd wait in the hallway for me to come home from work, trying to corner me into conversations about working things out. The worst part was that she'd listen through the walls and comment on my activities. If I had friends over, she'd knock on the door asking if we needed anything. If I was watching TV, she'd text me asking if I wanted to watch together. She even commented on my sleep schedule, expressing concern that I was staying up too late. It felt like living under constant surveillance, and my anxiety levels went through the roof. I started staying at Jessica's apartment most nights just to get some peace, but even that felt like letting them win. After 2 weeks of this psychological warfare, I'd reached my absolute limit. I called the lawyer. The lawyer, Patricia Wright, specialized in family law and harassment cases. When I explained the situation, she didn't seem particularly surprised, which was both reassuring and depressing. Unfortunately, this type of escalation isn't uncommon in family estrangement cases, she told me. Some families struggle so much with the loss of control that they'll engage in increasingly inappropriate behavior to force a reconciliation. She helped me document everything they'd done: the workplace harassment, the contact with my landlord and friends, the legal threats, the fake social media accounts, and now the surveillance via my mother living next door. "We have grounds for a restraining order," she said. "The pattern of harassment is clear, and your mother's decision to move next door after you'd made your desire for no contact obvious could be considered stalking behavior." I was hesitant to take legal action against my own family, but Patricia explained that sometimes a formal intervention was the only way to make people understand that their behavior was unacceptable. "Think of it this way," she said. "If an ex-boyfriend or former friend was doing these things to you, you wouldn't hesitate to seek legal protection. The fact that they're family members doesn't make their behavior less harmful or inappropriate." She was right. I filed for a temporary restraining order against all four of them, citing harassment, stalking, and interference with my work and living situation. The court date was surreal. My entire family showed up with their own lawyer, looking shocked that I had actually taken legal action. They seemed to genuinely believe that I was the one behaving unreasonably. Their lawyer tried to argue that their behavior was motivated by love and concern, not harassment. He painted me as an unstable person who was hurting my loving family by refusing all contact and communication. But Patricia had done her homework. She presented documented evidence of their campaign, screenshots of the fake social media accounts, records of the workplace visit, testimonies from friends who had been contacted, and the lease agreement for the apartment next door. The judge granted the temporary restraining order, noting that regardless of their intentions, their behavior had been invasive and inappropriate. They were ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from me, my workplace, and my home, and to cease all contact through third parties. The look of shock on their faces when the judge announced his decision was something I'll never forget. I think it was the first time they realized that other people might view their behavior as problematic rather than loving. My mother actually stood up and started crying, saying that the judge didn't understand that she was just trying to save her daughter. The judge told her to sit down and warned that any violation of the restraining order would result in arrest. For a few weeks after the restraining order was finalized, things were blissfully quiet. My mother moved out of the apartment next door. Though she tried to argue with Mrs. Peterson about getting her deposit back, claiming she was being forced to break the lease due to discriminatory legal action. I started sleeping better, feeling less anxious, and actually enjoying my life again. I began to think that maybe the legal intervention had finally made them understand that their behavior was unacceptable. I should have known better. I know some people will read this and think I'm overreacting, or that I should just forgive my family and move on. But I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean accepting continued poor treatment. I've learned that family isn't just about blood relations. It's about people who value you, respect you, and treat you with kindness. I may have lost my biological family, but I've gained something more valuable: self-respect and the knowledge that I don't have to settle for being anyone's afterthought. To anyone else who's dealing with similar family dynamics, I want you to know that your feelings are valid. You're not being dramatic for wanting to be treated with respect and love. You're not obligated to maintain relationships that consistently harm your mental health, even if those relationships are with family members. It's been a difficult journey, but for the first time in my life, I feel truly free from the weight of constantly trying to earn love that should have been given freely. And honestly, their absolutely unhinged reaction to me simply walking away has shown me exactly who they really are. I may have lost a family, but I've gained something more valuable: peace of mind and the knowledge that I deserve better than what they were giving me. I'm still processing everything that's happened, but I know I made the right choice. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away, especially when everyone else thinks you're wrong for doing so. Update. As I'm writing this, I just got a notification that they've created a Facebook group called Bring Juliet Home and are inviting extended family members to join. I can't even make this stuff up. The level of public drama they're willing to create rather than just apologizing is truly beyond anything I could have imagined. But it's also the final confirmation that I made the right decision. This isn't the behavior of people who love and miss me. This is the behavior of people who are angry that they lost control over someone they took for granted. I'm done. I'm finally completely done. And for the first time in 28 years, that feels like freedom.